What's going on, Waf? Just a nice little Monday here. It's like crypto got a bit of a bid over the weekend. I don't think we're completely out of the woods yet. I think we're still firmly in that chop range for sure, but it seems like Ordinals definitely got a over the weekend, man. I mean, it's just crazy touching base once a week. It always happens in like one day. I think we talked about puppets there, and I was thinking the low would be like 0.06 would be the absolute lowest before I would scoop one. I think they got down to like zero point 0.1. Now they're already back. They were at 0.15 the other day. I think they're like 0.145 now. And Node Monkeys, man, a big comeback story. Those were 0.15 very, very briefly. Now almost back to zero point 0.2. I saw you looking at one earlier this morning. But yeah, man, we definitely got a little bit of bid in runes and ordinals land. So excited to talk about that and dive into it.
Like what a difference a week makes. I mean, last week Bitcoin was down 8% on a Monday. We're now back up 8% this week, right? We were talking about all the bearish things last week. Mount Gox selling, we were talking about Germany selling, and now we're not even talking about that anymore, right? And to your point about puppets, I've been noticing puppets, 40% pump, node monkeys up about 20%. OMB also up 20%. That was one of the ones I was looking at last week to seem so low. And don't look now, but NatCat's up 20% as well.
Don't even say it. You can't say that.
But despite all of that, right? The runes, man, like I'm like burying the lead. Uh Billion Dollar Cat is up 48% since the show last week. And I went in
Oh,
heavy
oh.
on Billy this week, and it's paying off right away.
Dude, what is it even at? I honestly haven't opened up I've just been looking at ordinals charts. I was in touch grass mode all over the weekend, caught some waves, went surfing. So this is my real-time reaction. Oh, 55 mil. Let's go, dude. Big comeback. Oh, dude, I waffed. Not waffed. That's funny timing. I whiffed on Bank of Nakamoto. I was really trying to get that dip when it went sub 100 mil. I saw some FUD online. I was like, do I? But it's up 36% today. So just goes to show you, man, the oscillations in runes and ordinals are real. I mean, we talk about it every week, but like if you're just looking to play the edges and just kind of go for those compounding gains, there's some really solid like 30 to 50% movements pretty consistently in some of these collections. If you can study those collections and get comfortable with sort of where those buy and sell zones are, I mean, there's profit to be had.
Oh, totally agree. I went in heavy on Billy this week. I put in like 0.25 Bitcoin on Billy, and now I'm up
Ooh,
50% on it. So that's looking good.
ooh,
And then and then
let's
last week
go,
I
let's
also
go.
mentioned don't sell your runes that are just like for dust, right? Because like you never know when the pump happens. And I don't know if you noticed this one, but RSM Rune State Machine out of nowhere is up 1200% this week.
Whoa. Yeah, no kidding. Definitely don't sell your dust. That's a crazy multiple.
Yeah, so apparently it's like some protocol that's programmable runes. I happened to mint, I guess, 2 lots of it, so I had dust in my wallet, and next thing you know, it turned to like 4K. And I'm actually still bullish on it, so I've been adding more to it this week as it's been going up. So that's one I wanna highlight. It's still a very low market cap, a little bit under 6 million. It's trading for about 8 or 9 sats right now. I think that one has room to run.
Let's see. What's the name of this one again?
It's called RSM Rune State
Um,
Machine.
Yeah, look at that. It's 18 on the rune chart. So I have to check this out. Yeah, I definitely got to dive into this so we can talk about it more. But for people listening in who haven't heard of RSM before, I know I'm in there. Is there like an overview of other than programmable room? Is that sort of the whole catch?
Yeah, that is pretty much the catch. And then which brings me to another rune that hasn't come out yet, but I think it's something everyone needs to have on their radar is it's fractal Bitcoin. And the rumor is that's Unisat's token, and it's gonna be DeFi and also programmable runes.
Whoa. Is that so? In terms of that, is that like a release date on that? Is there a mint, or is that going to be, you think, just for Unisat users?
I think for now you just follow Fractal Bitcoin on X and keep up with the updates, but that's the rumor going around.
Oh my gosh. All right, that's huge. I'm definitely gonna have to glue into that one. And a perfect segue here in terms of releases. We got some links sent to us from JD, and it looks like the links did not copy, but I just dropped those in voice hangout chat. We got a couple of mints today. For all of these that I just posted here in voice hangout chat, first of all, shout out to JD. Continue to send him some blessings for just always being on top of stuff coming out. But the July 5th Bitcoin machine mint is kind of interesting. We talked about this in an earlier episode of Wafdawgs, BossDawgs. The Zbit, Blue Bitcoin, Rune, they're making a ecosystem with Zbit as the baseline currency. So they're dropping these loot boxes on July 5th. Loot boxes usually perform pretty well. I'm not super familiar. I know Bitcoin Machine has this whole gaming ecosystem that they've built. I tried to look into it once, but it's honestly just like a ton of stuff going on at their Discord. But it's a pretty cheap mint price on it. It's like 0.0001. So not too bad. And I know Zbit's done okay over the last couple of weeks. So just wanted to throw those out there. Again, shout out to JD. The other ones, I'm honestly not too keen on WAP. I'm not sure if you went through these here. But most of them, in terms of like the open edition, I just think that there's so many of those minted that it's not going to do great. I think the other ones are just such small collection sizes, they wouldn't really hit. Um, but a also good shout for Taproot Wizards Mission 5 deadline today. So just wanted to throw those out since we were talking about things coming out. Big shout out to JD. And, if you have any thoughts on any of those projects, I would love to hear it.
I think on BTC machine, always worth the flyer in my opinion. But you have sort of like two narratives that are crossing over there between runes and also just gaming, which I think gaming is just generally down right now. So not entirely bullish, but also I think it's cheap enough to go for. I do have a whitelist for this rare sadsman, but honestly, I haven't really been following it. I just kind of enter raffles and all the discords I'm in, and sometimes I hit on some raffles, and on the day of, I'll decide whether or not I'll mint. But I haven't really been tracking too much of these projects, to be honest with you. I've been really focused on runes and just kind of like the blue chip collections.
Yeah, totally agree with you there, Waf. And I know we're lockstep right now in terms of just focusing on runes as opposed to other stuff. And I really do think it's all about scaling up the bankroll. And I'm going to continue to say, I think while we're in this chop range in Bitcoin, this is a really good opportunity to be recycling, just kind of selling in and then buying into collections over and over again. If there's a big move up, you should definitely have some conviction bags if that's what your strategy is, and it all just depends what kind of trader you are. But I don't think there's any reason you can't do both. As long as you're not tying up all your liquidity, you should try to keep some free as much as you're able to make some of these plays. Because like you're seeing with these runes, right? It's pretty. It's not like as illiquid now that we're on Magic Eden, but it's really easy to move these floors. So on days where there's not a lot of volume, you're going to see stuff bleed like 30 or 40%. And if you're patient and you're buying on those days, I mean, you see on the Rune leaderboard, stuff moves 40% in a day. So if you're really just attuned to the price action here, we had ample opportunities last week to buy $1 billion cat at 40 million. Now it's back up to 55 million. So if you're putting in zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, you're making 30%, you're still making a solid $1,800, $2,000. So really good opportunities to just recycle, grow the bankroll. I was right there with you, Af. I was buying $1 billion cat at about 40 million, selling out at about 50 and 55, just kind of laddering out there. So that's just kind of been my cash cow, at least for the past couple of weeks. It's just nonstop $1 billion cat. It's a bid for me on a dump. It's a sell on a big up day. But yeah, I mean, it's rune season.
I totally agree with you. I actually bought this Billy coin on a separate wallet because I wanted to trade it and see like how well I could do trading it. I think just capturing the lows just makes a lot of sense. Last week there was a lot of I want to say fear in the market, right? Everybody's we were down in the 60 range, and people were worried that we were going to go lower. I thought we were at the bottom of the range, and I felt pretty confident that Bitcoin would rebound. Like I even took a 10x levered long last Monday. Took cashed that out for like 30%. So it just seemed like we're still range bound. Nothing really changed. But when we get to the lower end of the range, people get really fearful, get really bearish at the time when they should actually be switch bullish, in my opinion. So people need to like counter trade their emotions, in my opinion. And then when we get back to the top of the range, until we break that resistance, we're not going to know if we're going to all time highs or if we're just really just going to get hit, beat down by that resistance again when we approach the 70K level again. So I think that's kind of like the game we're playing right now in the market. We're now approaching, probably a long holiday week or weekend or week, whatever you want to call it. So it could be very light volume, and that could be interesting for the markets because you can see price rise unchallenged, or by the same time you can see bears trying to push it down with like pretty much everybody on vacation.
Yeah, really good awareness there, WAF. I mean, I think that's just one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that as there's bigger and bigger players entering in the game, and like we have the biggest player in the game now, right? Like we have banks who are holding huge hordes of Bitcoin. There's a lot of price fuckery that can go on at any point in time. So don't be surprised when you see Bitcoin get beaten down. We still are in that chop range, and I think people are kind of scared to pick a side. I would definitely say that the sentiment is pretty bifurcated on Twitter. It's people who are just like perma bullish, we're back, even just today, the movement up to 63K for Bitcoin, it's like, that was it. That was the low. We're going to look back and laugh. And then there's still people who are like, well, we're not that far off the support level here. So it really could go either direction. And I think the key is just sort of uh, being willing to play the edges and just tampering your expectations. I wouldn't get too bowled up. I would be, wouldn't be looking at the price action today and saying, hey, I'm going to go all in here. We're back. Let me buy the pump on node monkeys and puppets. But it's not to say sell all your bags here, right? You just want to have a nice, healthy median of like some different price entries, be willing to scale in if you need to, and just keep your eye and mind open to different ideas, I'd say is the big thing.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, like for weeks on end, I pretty much was sitting on my hands and not really making that many moves. But last week, once the price dropped down to 60, like that just felt like a good time to get in. The risk was lowered. I feel like the market reset. And he was able to get some opportunities. I mentioned last week, I thought I never seen so many opportunities in my life last week, and it turns out to be true. Doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet. Like now as we tick up in price, now you got people potentially taking profits or just being in the same range bound area again. We can see price tick down, so it makes it a little risky. So I just feel like when you see like RSI reset, when you see sentiment bearish, it just makes sense to take the other side of the trade.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think, we talked about this so many times, but I think the real key is just to have conviction in something that you're buying. If you're going to get really startled after a 20% move, not to say you can't take trades, right? Like there's plenty of trades that you can take where if the price goes down and you think it's going to go lower, then you should definitely sell, right? If your expectation is, hey, the price is going to go lower, you don't have to suffer the emotional turmoil of just losing money. But if it's something that you really believe in, it's a lot easier to stomach those moves. So with any trade, there's a possibility the price goes down and doesn't bounce back. I think that's where a lot of the panic happened over the weekend because, of course, if Bitcoin broke and went from 60 to 52K, it was possible. It probably would have been kind of bloody on the streets there, so to speak. But if it's something you had conviction in, you didn't mind holding for the long, and you were more excited to buy more, it would have been no problem. So I think, as always, if you're buying these things in these ranges, my advice is always just like buy less than you think. So I'm always just nibbling the price action when something like Billion Dollar Cat goes from 50 mil to 45 mil. I'm buying half or maybe a quarter of my full addition that I want to have. That way, if it drops to 40 or 35 million from there, I still have cash to buy more. And I'm not just taking this huge loss where I needed to pump to break even. So that's just my own personal guidance there on how to potentially play it. But, trade your own way, NFA.
Oh, I agree with you there. And I think right now for me, it is Billion Dollar Cat that I have the most conviction on. Even during the week, as I was trying to buy, and I try and buy mostly on Magic Eden, I was getting sniped nonstop on every purchase I was trying to make. So I literally stopped using Magic Eden this past week. So shout out to Mr. Bull. I had enough of getting sniped. So I just started using Magisat for sniping like pretty much all my room purchases now.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I know Mr. Bull posted a really awesome field report. I think last week, maybe last weekend. But yeah, it's all about different tools that are available for mempool sniping and some other helpful stuff out there. So definitely check that Philip report out. It's really helpful. Haven't had full time to sit in and engage with those sniping tools, but always a great idea. I usually just buy like one off the floor if need be, or just try to buy during low volume off Magic Eden. But pretty hype. We do have an interesting question here, Waf, posed from Poopaloop earlier today in an MVHQ content session, but he wanted to know, it is now July 1st. What are your thoughts on Rune June being over? I know that was sort of a tongue in cheek, we're back, runes are so hot. Now it's July. Are we still in Rune summer, do you think? Or is it just kind of like the hot pocket was in Rune June?
That's pretty funny. It was in jest, but I'm gonna just add a new one. I'm gonna say we fly in July.
I love it, dude. Let's go. You're gonna give us some merch ideas today for sure.
Yeah, so just going back to Magistat, it's just as easy as buying on Magic Eden. You literally just look at the rune you want to buy, and it's there with like the SAP price, and you just click purchase, and it's like no different than using a marketplace. So it's there's nothing like too sniping on Bitcoin. It's like just as easy as making a purchase on Magic Eden.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out and get attuned to the space. That sounds super powerful. But other than that, WAF, like, what have you been looking at in terms of indicators of just market sentiment? I'd say. I know you're mentioning RSA a lot. Are you actually plotting out the RSI over Bitcoin charts? Is it ordinals charts you're looking at? Like, could you give us some insight into that?
So I'm not like Fibonacci, who's like the chart guru, but for me, the stochastic RSI is like the only indicator I really use when I look at charts. And I just look for the resets when I see that it's down towards the bottom, and then there's like a blue line and a red line. When I see like the blue line crossing back over the red line, I know the market's gonna kind of uptick up again. And when I see something just like kind of bouncing on the bottom, I just know eventually it's gonna rise. And then the same by the same token, I know when like the RSI is like overheated and really hot, I know we're going to see some type of price decline, which that really helps me a lot. I want to say when I'm gonna FOMO into something because like something's just on fire and I might FOMO into something, and then also you just also have to be like cognizant of the time frames. So if you're looking at like a daily chart, the RSI can stay hot or heated for months at a time. But if you're looking at a 4 hour chart, then your time range might be a couple of days. Whereas if you're looking at a 15-minute chart, your timeline might be like just that day. So you have to be cognizant of the time frames, and that's how I use the RSI really just based on that. So like I could get bullish something on a long term trade if the RSI is pretty low and starting to tick up. I know it's gonna be weeks and months before it kind of goes all the way back up. I could build a position that way. And if I'm looking for a trade, I'm only looking at the shorter time frames.
Really nice breakdown there. Wow, definitely appreciate it. And I think RSI is a super nice, useful indicator in terms of just overbought and oversold. Like that's literally what the indicator is meant for. But I mean, it works really well. You see people use it on lots of different indices. People use it, so that's kind of why it works, right? Because everyone's looking at those zones. So I think it's smart. And again, I think where this cycle feels different to me than other crypto cycles that we've had is that there is just so much chop. And you know, the ability to go sideways, like genuinely, I think in crypto prior, we usually did not see a lot of sideways action. It was either collections were soaring, going up day after day, or coming back down. Like I don't know if you agree, Waf, but back with like peak bull NFT times, it was just if you were in the premier collections, they would be going up pretty steadily. Maybe once they reach like blue chip status, board ape or something, they would chill out. But even then, it was just if it wasn't going up, it was going down and losing the limelight. But with ordinals and runes, it's like the spotlight's pretty consistently over the same collections, and there's not like a ton of movements. It's not like we're seeing everything going crazy, everything tanking. It's just a lot of like small incremental progress. So I think because of that, it really does incentivize using a wider timeline. Crypto is such a fast pace space. It's really like tempting to always be looking at the 1 hour or like 15-minute charts. But for runes and ordinals, I really do think zooming out gives you a more level-headed mindset of your trades because you're just not in as big a rush.
Yeah, it's probably due to the liquidity because there's not that much traded every day. I mean, even the one day on today, it's probably like 7 or 8 Bitcoin as the number one traded ordinal for the day. I don't even know what it is today. I know for the week it was probably Node Monkeys, but just not as much trading action. You don't have like a blur type of market where you have like bid ask and stuff like that too. So that's another factor I would say that lends to not seeing that much price action, right? So the floor can stay the floor pretty much for the whole week, for the whole month. It stays relatively the same. But then, if someone sweeps it with just 5 figures or whatever it is, like then the floor goes up significantly. I think this market is really made to like, bore you really. I think we're in that phase where it's just boring and people are touching grass. I also think you probably got like Wall Street people really want to, improve and increase their Bitcoin position. So this chop works for them. This get bore people and get them to sell and build their positions before blast off, right?
When Waf, you could not have had a better phrasing for the perfect segue. We've been talking about it for months. We had it last week. Now we're talking about it for the first time since the blast TGE, markets being boring, blasting off. Let's talk about it. I think we talked about this inflow of liquidity we were expecting from Blast for a while, at least the possibility of it. Do you think part of this rotation that we've been seeing into ordinals and runes, and again, it hasn't been anything crazy, right? We're not anywhere close to all-time highs for runes and ordinals, but there definitely was a pop over the week. You think any of that is liquidity coming out of the Blast ecosystem? Because I would say the general sentiment on Blast is that it came in a lot colder than expected. I wouldn't say it was a flop by any means, but I definitely think the actual airdrop value came in kind of light, at least from what people's expectation were. A lot of people are saying that's kind of the end to airdrop farming. We'll see how that plays out. I feel like airdrop mechanics will always be a part of this space. But it definitely seems like, in terms of things being boring, doesn't seem like people are going to keep their liquidity there for season two. I'm not trying to generalize. There obviously will be some people, but like, just in an overall sense, it seems like there's maybe some liquidity leaving that ecosystem, perhaps going elsewhere.
Like my snap reaction is to have that same kind of sentiment, but then the more I think about it, I feel like when Blast first, the L2 first debuted, it was also, I want to say people were bearish on it. What it didn't live up to expectation, and then over time, the activity level like greatly increased, and then all of a sudden, probably if you were on any L2 on Ethereum, it was probably on Blast. And I think like a similar thing's gonna happen this time around, like where everyone's kind of bearish. It's almost like a bullish indicator at this point. It's like when everyone's like when Bitcoin was 60K and everyone's now bearish when you're supposed to go bullish. It's like probably the same thing with Blast. Honestly, I really could see that happening again right now. I don't think any maybe the people that like were just farming it sold and now they're out. But I don't know if that liquidity actually entered Bitcoin. And I just think the market overall has been up, not just like the Bitcoin ecosystem, just general broad market up week. So I don't think blast like impacted like Bitcoin in any way. But I do think just give it some time. I think the Blast token will go up, and then the sentiment towards everything that like Pac-Man has done will also rise along with further usage of the chain. And I think that makes it better, honestly, because if you're super bullish on day one, like the only direction you could go is down, right? And then like we've seen like those hot mints or anything hot in general where it's so anticipated, it's everyone's like pretty much at peak euphoria, and then the only direction is down only. So I think this is actually a great opportunity to now get into Blast and maybe even accumulate at this 2 cent range.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, Af. Honestly, I've been pretty open about being a buyer under $2 billion valuation. I think that's a little bit light in terms of what it could be or what it should be. But it's interesting to see. I think at the very least, people I know did farm pretty aggressively over there, staked a lot of money. Definitely seemed like some people were debridging. So I think you're right that money is coming into the market. I mean, we saw some unusual whale headline today that someone bought like I want to say $500 million worth of Bitcoin on Binance today. So there's definitely a lot of people flowing in that's not from Blast. But on top of that, in terms of just looking for more stuff to do, we are sort of seeing this rotation just back into NFTs in general over this weekend, right? Not just ordinal stuff, but Ethereum stuff. We're seeing collections like Bored Apes, Cool Cats, whatever it is, just blue chip NFTs have been up. So I wonder if that's sort of going to be, again, a big wave into digital assets in culmination with crypto coming in, ETH approval, Solana ETF submissions, like all this stuff could be great for the ecosystem as a whole. So I really do think we're just getting kicked off here.
It almost seems like everyone's end game is an L2, right? Because Pac-Man started it with Blur, and then now all of a sudden we got Blast, and then Meme Land is went from NFTs to eventually creating their own L2, and now I think I recently saw Luca Nets talking about an L2 as well. So I think everyone's trying to monetize the entire community.
Yeah, I mean, Pack definitely did something pretty interesting with that native yield. And, if people are going to be able to replicate that now and build their own native yield for their ecosystems, it's going to be really interesting. I would say we're probably going to see a little bit of L2, congestion and just a fight for L2s, which is probably going to cannibalize the space to an extent in terms of them competing with each other, right? I think I read like a infrastructure report at the start of 2020, is it like mid-year 2024? Um, so I this infrastructure report was just talking a lot about how L2s were going to be a big emerging theme this year, which they nailed. But they just talk about how if there's going to be, dozens and dozens of L2s, it's potentially going to limit the ability of any L2 to really, really, really take off because the attention is going to be spread across a lot of these ecosystems. And I mean, think about it when, we saw something like OpenSea that was the only place to come out and trade NFTs. It really just put a pipeline on all the stuff that we'd be seeing. Everyone's looking at the same stuff. But once you have 10, 20 different L2s that are out, it's going to be competing attention economies. It might make it a little bit harder for stuff to fire off. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see like really which L2s stick and which actually have that value prop.
I don't disagree. I think like you're gonna see some of these L1s just die off that they don't use. So it's basically the market's telling you it's Ethereum, it's Solana, and it's the L2s, and everything else is like vaporware, right? I think like any other L1 right now, it's just not competing. Whether it's like a Polkadot or Cardano or just whatever other L1 we want to talk about, like they're just not really on the radar, and I don't think they're going to get mass adoption at this point because I think they already lost. And then I think going back to Bitcoin, like what's going to be the L2 on Bitcoin that wins? Like we had Merlin very hot for a minute, and now I don't hear anybody talking about Merlin anymore. I don't even know what the activity on Merlin is anymore either. So when Bitcoin starts getting really congested and we're in the real bull market again, then all of a sudden we're going to be talking about L2s again, but on Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, WAF. I think if any network could really benefit from an L2, it's like I don't think you super need L2s on Solana because they're so fast and the fees are so cheap. I definitely think L2s make sense for Ethereum. I really like Base personally. I just think it's a nice network. But to your point on Bitcoin, I think the cumulative volume of Merlin Marketplace was just so low, man. It's crazy. Like I remember thinking, okay, I'm gonna circumnavigate having to off bridge my assets during that lockup period and just sell on Merlin's marketplace. There's just no volume on any collection. There was like zero sales of puppets, maybe one sale. So I have no idea what Merlin's even doing, what the founder did, if he was able to loan out that Bitcoin and somehow profit off of that. But at least in my mind, they're just dead in the water. Maybe at some point they'll come back. I think they're still at like a 600 million market cap or something. But it's just crazy, man. I don't know how they dropped the ball that bad in hindsight.
I mean, they had such a lead, they had so much total value locked. And even like Merlin started when they had their their IDOs or whatever you want to call it, they captured so much deposits, and I just don't know how they messed it up. They really messed it up. I guess like missing that deadline for the unlock prior to the halving. Just the market really punished them for that.
Yeah, big time. But to your point, I mean, it's an open competition. There could definitely be a Bitcoin L2 that comes out if there's a way to keep fees low consistently, especially as sats go higher and higher. And also just the transaction times. If there's a way to expedite that as well, we could definitely see an L2 get some major traction. And I think with L2s, it really decreases the friction and hopefully can add to some liquidity in some of these collections that we like to trade. So, you know, as we see the technology progress, we can definitely see these bags make some moves. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of new bags that are introduced between now and then the invent of those L2s.
Yeah, and I also think there's other L2s that are being developed on Bitcoin that I'm not really paying too much attention. So that there's like a huge race and a huge like L2 war on Bitcoin too. And I think most of the people that are it's mostly focused like in the East. Like I would say like in the Asian markets, they really focused on the L2s. But just haven't seen them come to pass yet. I think when they had that Bitcoin Hong Kong meetup, like most of the companies there were L2s. And that was like probably late last year. So L2s have been sort of on the back burner. Maybe they make a, an impression on the market by the end of the year.
Yeah, well said, Waf. And I mean, honestly, the fact that they're having these Bitcoin conferences in Hong Kong, I think it really just speaks to how it's such a global currency. I don't think Ethereum was I'm gonna put an asterisk by the statement because I was gonna say I don't think it was as broad reaching. It obviously was, right? Like it's a global currency as well, but I don't think it was as mainstream accepted across all parts of the globe as Bitcoin is. Like you see in some of these other countries in the world, they literally have like Bitcoin ATMs everywhere. They're buying cups of coffee with Bitcoin. They've really accepted Bitcoin globally. So just the global standard of that, it really does bring in the opportunity for a lot of people to get onboarded. Because if we're comparing North America to the world, it's just so many more hooks that are available to bring people into these markets and potentially pump some of these bags here. So as more and more of the world figures out what the heck are ordinals, what are runes, like it's really just a good spot for the whole ecosystem in general. IMO.
Yeah, I agree. Like I think, we're not quite ready to use Bitcoin, which we perceive to be a store of value on just your everyday transactions, but maybe in the future, like that'll occur on L2s and Lightning and everything else. But for now, I think it's more like a store of value and a place to degen, right? I think that's what it is right now for me anyway, and that's how I'm going to continue to use it. But yeah, it's good to know that these things are still out there and on the horizon. I'm still, a full on bull when it comes to crypto in general and Bitcoin too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of runes I wanted to ask you about WAF. First and foremost, let me get your take on Satoshi Nakamoto because I think when it debuted, it was at about $100 million market cap. It's now down to 26 million, which is some of the lowest market cap we've ever seen on it. Do you think this is one that will stand the test of time? I still personally have some Satoshi bags, so I'm a bit biased, but I'm not even adding here. If this is something like Billion Dollar Cat, where it was a little bit more active, I certainly would. But for this one, I don't know. It's got the namesake. It's room number 6. It's kind of hard to bet against it from that historic point of view, but it's definitely I think in the territory of getting surpassed by some other runes here pretty soon.
I mean, for me, it's just a hold. There's like two other runes I like that are lower volume that I like to talk about real quick. I think one is Wanko Manko runes. I think that one has the meme ability and the ability to come back. It's lower traded. Like today, it's only been trading about $50,000 worth of volume, but I could see that where on a day it catches like 100, $200,000 worth of volume. Like that could easily double in price. And the other one that I think is similar to that, but probably I'm a little bit even more bullish on is Waddle Waddle Pengu. I just think I think Farmer Joe originally created this token and then he basically passed it off to another member in the community who's like handling it. And I just think there's a lot of people in the ecosystem, in the rune system, in the Xverse. That's actually funny. Xverse is the wallet. I mean, I meant X Universe, like Twitter. That are like pump this coin up. So I think this is like another one that has potential to move up as far as like the lower caps. They're not super low cap, like 8 million and 7 million, so not super low. So I think that kind of gives it like a higher floor. Like I don't think these things go to zero, but I think they have like room to really run. And when we see a real runes bull, like these could easily, go to 100 million, 50 million. Like it's not that hard.
Yeah, completely agree, Waf. With that being said, man, I'm just going through on Magic Eden right here. I'm really looking into this RSM here. I mean, if it really is programmable runes and we figure out what that really means, but at a $5 million market cap, that's a pretty early entry still, even after this weekend.
I mean, if you look at it on the 7 day chart, like it has the most trades in the last 7 days out of any other rune.
Wow. Uh,
I mean, granted, the price is low, so it could have that going for it. But the volume is even pretty good for the past day or so. It really caught on. I want to say like about 2 days ago.
Yeah, it looks like about 5.7 Bitcoin volume just today, which is pretty substantial. I mean, honestly, that's kind of where I've been gluing my attention to for runes. I kind of fade stuff that's at a higher market cap but doesn't get a lot of volume. So some of just like this middle tier stuff, I don't even look at like something like Nicholas Pi runes. I have no idea what that is, but I see 0 Bitcoin traded on it today. Even Zbit, like I brought it up a few weeks ago, and I think it is a good long-term hold, but it just doesn't have a ton of daily volume. But yeah, looking at RSM with 5 Bitcoin, those are things that I like to take feelers on. Another one I wanted to shout out. I don't know why I like this rune so much, to be candid with you, but Psycho Hamster. Something about it to me just has that meme ability. I've slowly been accumulated on it. The biggest thing for me that tips the scale is the volume. It gets like half a Bitcoin of volume every day, which isn't anything crazy, but it's pretty substantial considering it's only at a $3 million market cap. When it was at like 2 million, I think there was some days where it had over a Bitcoin every single day. So any of these collections that get a good amount of Bitcoin in volume, those are sums that I like to keep my eye on. I know Silly Stupid Cat falls into that bucket as well. It gets a pretty good amount of daily volume given its low market cap. So I haven't bought any of Stupid Silly Cat yet, just because I believe in $1 billion cat more. So I'm just kind of picking between my cats there. But for anyone listening in at home and you're trying to get some exposure to some runes, I would just scroll through, look for some stuff that's low market cap with a lot of volume. If there's a lot of volume but the market cap's still low, that's sometimes a good indicator that there's more flows to follow.
I like those two calls, like Psycho Hamster and Stupid Silly Cat. They have the $1 billion cat playbook, where like their social media and their memes are really good. They're highly communicative and active on X. I think a lot of people in the space are also holders of these coins, especially Psycho Hamster. So I do like that, and I do like seeing like decent volume for what the market cap is, because there's some higher market cap coins that you just don't even see that much volume on. I think Pups is like an example of that one. Just not a lot of volume on Pups, and it's much higher market cap. So like I'd rather take my shots with a Psycho Hamster. Like I have Pops, but I'm just holding. But I would take my shot at Psycho Hamster. Stupid Silly Cat, I'm holding like a moon bag for free that I'm just riding. So I'll just let it play out. But yeah, those are the things you should look for. That's why I like Wanko Manko and Waddle Waddle as well.
Yeah, great shouts on those too. I mean, I do think Wanko Manko, just given its connection to Casey there, and that's his whole lore and background, those definitely have a pretty decent chance of running there. I don't know too much about this Farmer Joe guy. Is there anything that I should know about him? I've heard a lot about him, and people mentioned like, oh, he might have made this project, but I just don't know what is his significance.
Oh, he's behind Pups, and he's the one that created the Pups onto Solana, where he bridged the BRC20 over to Solana. So he's the one that kind of developed all that.
Oh wow, okay, gotcha. I was always thinking so. Le Papator is the guy who made the art, but then Farmer Joe's the guy who ran the token.
Yeah, exactly, and he's the one that had you burn your rune pups in order to receive the, rune token as well, so he developed that I guess that rune puppets website with the kit and the conversion and all that stuff, he did all that.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. Oh man, Waf, you got me here, dude. I'm looking at the rune chart. I'm very tempted to buy some RSM here. I've bought like one or two things live in an episode before. I think I might have to buy some Psycho Hamster live though. It just seems like it's speaking to me right now.
I sent, Fibonacci that chart on RSM, Rune State Machine, earlier today. It looked like it was forming like a bullish pendant, and I asked him for his opinion on it, and he said it's looks like it's going higher. He gave it like a 66% probability that it goes higher. So that was good enough for me to add some more to my bags.
I love it, dude. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that's like a mental holdup for me in crypto is that usually stuff that just runs like crazy continues to run. Gains beget gains. But it is weird how like when something's up 1,300% on the day, I'm usually like, this probably could like cool off. So going back to stuff that I've talked about earlier, I definitely think when you're in that territory, um, sometimes it's just best to like nibble at it. If you're not sure whether to buy or not, but you definitely want to have a position, you can always just buy a smaller bag than expected. And then if the price goes down, great, you can buy more there. If the price goes up, then, at least you weren't exposed to too much downside risk.
Yeah, I generally agree with you there. There's people that always go by the mindset of like, hold your winners and let your runners run, and like just cut your losers, right? And but sometimes we have a tendency we have gains on our winners and we sell those, and then we don't capture the additional upside, right? Like if you sell at a 10x, you got to hold to get a 100x, right? You got to hold to get a 1000x, right? You can't sell. So if you sell your winners, that's the risk you run, that it goes up even higher. So there's always like that balancing act that you have to do for yourself when it comes to, buying high and holding, or not buying high for, not going in, with due to FOMO. So that's just market psychology right there, really.
Absolutely, man. 100%. But all right, I did it. I pulled the trigger here. I just bought some Psycho Hamster while we were live on air, so let's go.
Did you use Magicet?
Dude, I did use Magic Eden. I'm gonna do that. I will buy some RSM with Magistat after the show when I got a chance to just sit down and look at it for the first time.
Yeah, right now there's not too many pending buys, so I don't know. Maybe it's at that time of day where the market kind of cools off after hours. I don't know.
I mean, it's still peak summer, I think people might just be, to your point, not around as much. Not to say that you can really attribute less activity to nicer weather and people touching grass, but it's kind of had been a boring market. I think there's a lot less activity. You kind of just feel it, more passive trading going on just throughout the day. So I'm sure once it gets a little bit less nice out and we get people gathered around their computers again, or just some serious breakthroughs, I'm sure once Bitcoin can reclaim that 70K area or fall below 60, we'll probably start to see some more volatility in the market as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because like to your point, like starting tomorrow, I'm gonna be touching grass for the rest of the week. I won't be around myself, and with very limited access to the markets, and I can't really be on my phone. So yeah, so it'll be time for touching grass, and we'll see the markets probably cool off in terms of volume.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't be surprised. So, I mean, good buying opportunity for people who are out there if you want to get back from the beach or whatever else you're doing on July 4th. If you do see some stuff is down due to low volume, uh, you know, floors moving in either direction off low volume is sometimes a really good fade opportunity. You can look at that in any market where when prices are moving substantially off of low volume, it's really easy to fill in those gaps after the fact. So if you start to see some floors sell off, but it's only because of like two or three sales, there's a good chance volume returns and it goes snaps right back into place. So definitely is a shout to people listening. If you have some free time, definitely keep an eye out on prices and stuff. You never know when you're going to see a really good buy op in the market.
Yeah. So since you just bought Psycho Hamster, is there any ordinals on your radar currently?
Any ordinals? Trying to think. Honestly, not really. I think it's just the blue chips on sale. I'm optimistic that Nat Cats continue with this strength, but not really holding out too much hope. Just kind of chilling. You know what? I take it back. The one I do want to bring up again. A long time. I brought this up in the second episode we did of Boss Dogs, but since I've seen them been creeping up. They faded away for a little bit. Those are the pennies that are on Bitcoin. I still think it's a really fun narrative, and I think it's just funny, which is like a really good sign for ordinals, honestly. Like, I think a lot of ordinals are just funny projects. Like, you look at puppets, you look at frucks. There's just a built-in element of fun and humor to them. So this idea of pennies on chain being worth thousands of dollars someday, I think it's a fun narrative. Those crept up from about 0.003 at their low. They're back to 0.0066. So those have been up about 100% over the past week or so. Um, I could see them making a move. I still have a bag of those from a while ago. Haven't really touched them. Not jumping the gun and buying anything yet because I still think we're in that firm chop territory, but it's one that's got my eye back on it after a long time of just not even looking.
I didn't notice that. I saw that called in a different chat that I'm in. Up over 100%, looking pretty well. I think for me personally, like the node monkeys is like attracted my attention. Like I showed you that one I liked earlier today. Like there's some sub 100K inscriptions with, you look for those slightly above floor traits, and then you can see like in a bull market that you might make multiples of the floor off of those type of purchases where it's like not exactly super rare, but it's not a floor, but it's priced at the floor. So I've been looking at that stuff when it comes to the Known Monkeys collection. I feel like I missed my opportunity on OMB. I thought last week was so low. I mean, granted, it's still
Yeah.
0.22.
Yeah.
So I'm still looking there. Quantum Cats is actually still holding up like so well. So there's really no low entry on Quantum Cats right now. I just don't think that's happening. It's holding up really, really solidly. And yeah, those are the kind of ones I'm looking at. And then puppets, I do have puppets, so I'm not really looking at it. But you know what? That was a huge opportunity there for a 40% gain as well.
Yeah, really well said, Waf. I mean, great breakdown. I think we're thinking the same thing, right? Like we talked last week, we're like, wow, these are crazy low prices. And it was. I made a note to myself today. I'm like, next time your gut is telling you that these are really low, and if it goes lower, buy it. It's like just buy it then and buy more if it goes even lower. Like puppets at point one, we've seen consistently it'll bounce off of there. If it goes to point oh 0.08 and then goes to 0.12, who cares, right? Like there's plenty of opportunities. I think there's definitely big buyers in those collections. I mean, same with node monkeys. Like anytime the floor dips substantially, a big buyer comes in and sweeps them. So I think it's just a matter of time until these really enter post accumulation phase. I think we're firmly in that accumulation phase right now. I remember one of the first big milestones that puppets like surpassed on just huge volume was 0.14, and now they really gravitate towards that zone. Like we've talked about VWAP in other episodes, they're really at that like mean price. Obviously node monkeys fell a little bit further from their peak, but they still were in that point two accumulation zone for a while. So I think there's a good opportunity still. I'm personally probably just waiting here unless I see a really rare one get listed. I mean, like we talked about last week, there's some fire sales when the price goes down. Like people were selling hooded node monkeys for nothing, not nothing, but barely above floor. Once volume comes back, those rares really just surge in prices. So I'm not really buying anything right here because I think we're still in that chop. But if it goes back to that 0.15 level, I'm a buyer on Nude Monkeys. Same with puppets at point 0.1, et cetera, et cetera. I think just trying to find those like local lows and then selling them for a few Bitcoin more. Why not?
Yeah, it's funny because like I'm looking at the 7 day, change in the floor price, and everything is green, and I don't want to buy it when it's all green. But then it's like, is this do you think we look back and was last week like the absolute bottom, or is this still do we come back next Monday and see like we're red, or is this the beginning of sort of like the higher prices, or is it still chop? and was last week the bottom. Like next week, do you think the prices are higher than today or lower?
Um, I'm gonna say lower. I think it's probably gonna be close to the same, to be honest. Like, I just think it's gonna be very dependent on the day. Like, I'm saying lower because I'm thinking today we pumped a little bit, but like I think it's just gonna be consistently collections are down 20%, now they're up 20%. They're down, 30, they're up 30. Like it's just gonna be a balancing act with all of these. Similar to Nat Cats, it's like great, they're back up to 0.14. Tomorrow they'll be back at 0.011. Then they'll be, back to 0.013. So I just think they're going to be bouncing around so much that it's probably going to be exactly where we're at. I don't think much is going to change until there's a significant catalyst one way or another to move us. But that makes it good if you're just playing the ranges.
Okay, that's good to know. Like, it's interesting to hear the different perspectives. I think last week might have been the bottom, so not that next week could be higher, but I think last week was probably the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely rooting for it, and I think it might be. But something that I've really just noticed, at least this cycle with crypto, it's just weird how many times we have heard over the past few months. Like, I think that was it. Like, I think Bitcoin's at the low. Is really just zooming out and looking at that chart. Like, there's definitely support at Bitcoin 60K. There's so many potential catalysts and so many people who want to get Bitcoin that I would expect us to launch higher. But like if you zoom out on the year, it's up almost 200%. So I'm definitely a firm believer in pullbacks at certain points. So I think it's like I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's the bottom, and we can look back and if it was the bottom last week, 100%, it's going to be like, oh wow, what a low that was there. But I'm always hesitant to like call it a bottom because I don't want to get people too bowled up. And I just really want to emphasize for like the audience at home that you should really exercise good risk management in a portion like this. Like just looking at the market, I don't really have a bias one way or another here. I could see us going higher, I could see us going lower. So when I'm in a situation like that, I just kind of look for what are the plays in front of me. If there's a new project like RSM, I want to look into that. Got a ton of volume, seems like a good one to play. But even here, it seems like we could fall back to that Bitcoin support. And if we're testing it for the fourth or fifth time, maybe we fall through. On the other side, we did just bounce off the support pretty aggressively. So maybe we go through to 70K and this is the one that gets us through. It's like whenever I see it going both ways and I don't really have strong conviction, to me, that's just a time to like touch grass and wait. So I do agree with you. Like I would say there's probably a slightly higher skew for me with the charts going up as opposed to going back. But just for anyone listening at home, really exercise caution in this spot. I think it's, pretty 50-50 here.
As always, not financial advice. Do your own research. But I think also from like a market psychology perspective, if we are not believing the rallies, like then maybe we're in that disbelief rally phase of the Wall Street cheat sheet in terms of market psychology, and then maybe the run is like closer than we think, right? Like I always try and think of like there's at least a probability to that and attribute like a certain percentage that could be the case, and then I think about the risk of like, do I value the risk of being in something as the greater, or do I value the risk of being out of something as greater? And I think now it's like I feel almost like teetering, where like node monkeys at 0.187, like in a few weeks, like this might look like an awesome buy, or by the same, and maybe I attribute that as like a 50% chance. Um, and maybe buying it is a bad decision if we go down, right? So like but then how far could it really go down? So then maybe that's only like a 10% bearish decision. I just try and like kind of weigh things like that, and I just think potentially we're at the beginning of one of a disbelief rally, and just maybe this is it. Granted, I don't say that's like a high probability, but I'm just saying like that probability still exists. That's why I just don't want to dismiss any rally just out of hand, just in case it really is the beginning of like the real rally.
Oh yeah, no, 100% laugh, and definitely not trying to dismiss that. I think it's more so just not to fully buy into it, right? Like I'd say to discount it would say no, no way, like go short here. I don't buy it. I definitely was going short earlier when it just seemed like we couldn't break 70K. But I think this is different. Like all the people thought, oh, if we fall below 60K, that's it. Bitcoin's going to lose strength, and then 52 is the next stop. And we've really defended 60K very well. We briefly went below it for, I think it was like during our last week's episode of Boss Dogs, and I believe you went long there, and it paid out great, right? Because Bitcoin bounced off. But it's just a difficult chart. Like the same vein of let's not dismiss this as a rally. If you look on the weekly chart, for sure. But then if you look at the monthly, it's like we're firmly in a downtrend for the last month. So it really all just depends on your time frame. Like Bitcoin's still down 6.6% over the last month from a high of 70K. And then it's up 6% this week from a low of about 60,000, maybe a little bit closer to 59,000. 59,480 is what I'm seeing here. So it just all depends, right? Like on the monthly, we're down about as much as we're up on the weekly. So I think just because of that, like it all evens out, and you could really skew your perspective on whatever time frame you want to look at. Like I could easily see people calling bearish or bullish. For me, at least, where I'm going to say, hey, we're back in the rally is like if we can clear that 70K with some conviction and then hold 70K as a new support, I'm for sure going to be buying there, and it's going to be a higher price than here, 100%. Like it will be, but I'll just feel a lot more confident in that zone because it will say, hey, we were able to make that new higher high, and we kept the bull formation. So I do think you're totally right, Waf. Like the bottoms are going to be here if we do rip. It's just a matter of like with the bankrolls that we have as traders, like are you going to be trying to front run it and try to catch the knife or like wait for the confirmation candle? And there's no right or wrong. It's just like a matter of personal preference.
I agree with what you said, but I think before we even see the Bitcoin price breaking 70K, we're going to see a run on like alts and things inside the Bitcoin ecosystem. I think they're gonna run before Bitcoin runs like higher. Like Bitcoin could be on the rise and not reach the all-time high. These things are gonna be doing multiples of Bitcoin. Like the Bitcoin dominance chart has been like going down. I think like it's on the verge of really cratering, and I could see pretty much like altcoins really doing well. I can see Ordinals, I can see runes, I can see everything doing well, while Bitcoin is still moving up, just not at a higher percentage.
Yeah, no, that's a great clarification there, Waf, and I totally agree with you there. I think to that point, um, for sure. I mean, I think it's more so just like because some of these ordinals are expensive, I would just try to have a decent risk tolerance or understanding of like what is your actual uh, possibility to lose just from a NFA, but like maybe given some tips for people who are trading out there. But as long as you're comfortable with like what the downside on these collections are, and if something black swan event does happen, or if it just doesn't catch the bid, you're cool with it. But I do agree with you there, Waf. From just a risk reward perspective in alts, I mean, once these pick up, they're going to go crazy, and it's like how much lower are they really going to go from ordinals, right? If we're talking about puppets, will they fall 40%? They might go back to that point one range that we saw last week. But if you're comparing that to their potential peak once ordinals heat up again, going back to maybe point 0.5 range, talking about like a 300% gain. So risk reward perspective, it's great. And I'm definitely with you, man. I think alts are going to heat up pretty aggressively when the time comes, and it as we've seen in crypto happens overnight. Like it's going to be some crazy candles.
Yeah. Having said all that, what is like your plan on how to play this coming week?
So for me, I'd say first and foremost, I'm already positioned into things that I believe in. The only thing I'm under positioned in is ordinals, but we've talked about that last week and this week. The only reason I'm under positioned in ordinals now is because I think there is a greater expectation in my mind for runes. I really have liked runes because it's so easy to size. If I want to buy zero point zero 0.05 worth of them, if I want to buy zero point 0.1 worth of them, whatever size I want to place, I can scale up to that. So I love that aspect of it. I also just really like the liquidity in and out. I don't really have to worry so much about like traits and buying above floor, all that stuff. So I'm really just positioning myself with runes. I have Psycho Hamster, Billion Dollar Cat, gonna get into some RSM. I have RSIC, have some longer term stuff that's really just like years plays in the future. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Wizard, Magic Internet Money. So those are my holdings for the most part. If there's any pullbacks on them over the next week, I will be buying dips. If there's any periods of like 40% gains in a day, I will be selling the rips. I won't be selling my whole positions, but I'm just scaling out. That's all I've been doing the last month is just this cycle of if it's down a lot, I will buy. If it's up a lot, I will sell what I bought at the low and just slowly accumulating profit that way. Laddering out. So if we get a big, green candle, I still got some exposure. And then same thing for ordinals. It's just I don't have as big a bankroll. So like I'm not really trying to go out and buy multiple puppets or node monkeys. But if there's a good opportunity and we get back to those levels from last week, I'll probably try to buy one or both.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I think I'm trying to probably take some profits on Billion Dollar Cat and then just kind of monitor the ordinals, node monkeys, probably top of my list. And I'll add any RSM on a lower price, and build for a bigger trade on that. And that's it. And that's gonna probably happen when I'm back at the end of the week, probably into the weekend. So maybe it'll be lower volume. Maybe we get a little trickle up and we stay pretty steady, without people trading. So I could cash out a little bit. If not, I'll just hold and wait for lower prices to add to my positions. But I think ultimately it's gonna be a trade. It just depends on the time frame, pretty much. Um, yeah, that's pretty much all I got for today, Ross. Anything else?
No, I think that's it, Wav. I just hope you have a great holiday week and weekend, sir. Definitely enjoy the time touching grass, man. Once again, really enjoy hosting this with you as always. Great that we're both thinking about runes and just oscillating some profits. And I love the conviction, man. For real, I really do. I definitely think it's just worked so well, and I've seen in your trading just having the conviction always pays off. So I definitely have conviction in it. I hope it comes sooner than later. Really, I mean, it would be so sick if alts just ran to launch a summer campaign for Bitcoin and stuff. But we'll definitely see. I think. Let me just get a timestamp of what Bitcoin price is at right now for this week, so we can talk about it next week. But then I'm down to wrap. We're at $63,062 to end this recording.
Very nice. I do have one last point before we close out because you kind of triggered something for me.
Please,
When this
please.
bull run first started, I want to say probably late in 2023 or like the Q4. I made a lot of concentrated large bets, and it was really due to conviction. And then after that, I kind of sat on profits, because there was nothing that I had huge conviction in. But I feel like that conviction's coming back, and I'm starting to make higher concentrated bets again. So that's why I feel really good about the market, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this week and getting on the horn with you again on next Monday. You have a happy 4th of July. Enjoy touching grass. Enjoy time with friends and fam, and we'll talk again next Monday.
Sounds great, man. Everybody out there who's celebrating, have a happy holidays. We'll catch you next time.
Later.